So you want to own a sports team. Here's the strange part. Many professional sports franchises barely break even operationally, and some lose money outright. Owners spend hundreds of millions on player salaries, coaches, facilities, and staff, often more than they bring in from tickets and merchandise alone. And yet sports franchises have created more billionaire wealth than almost any other asset class in modern America. Jerry Jones bought the Dallas Cowboys for $140 million in 1989. The Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl since 1995. Today, the franchise is worth roughly $10 billion. That's a return of over 7,000% on a team that often doesn't generate huge operating profits. By the end of this video, you'll understand how that's possible, where the real money actually comes from, and why the team on the field is often the least important thing the owner controls. There are basically three levels to this business. At the bottom, minor league and small market franchises. A minor league baseball team might cost anywhere from a few $1 million to a few tens of millions. Smaller NHL and NBA franchises can sell for hundreds of millions. Local markets, limited upside, smaller fan bases. Then there's the middle tier, mid-market NFL, NBA, and MLB teams. The Denver Broncos sold for $4.65 billion in 2022. The Phoenix Suns sold for $4 billion in 2023. At the time, those numbers looked absurd. Within a couple years, they looked cheap. And then there's the top of the market, the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Yankees, the Golden State Warriors. These aren't businesses anymore. They're cultural infrastructure, and almost none of them ever become available. Because when you buy a sports franchise, you're not just buying a team, you're buying membership into one of the most tightly controlled cartels in American business. NFL owners vote on every ownership transfer. The number of teams is effectively fixed, and that artificial scarcity is the single biggest reason franchise values keep exploding. Because unlike normal businesses, new competitors almost never appear. There are basically three ways in. First, wait for a forced sale. Owners usually sell because of death, divorce, scandal, financial pressure, or league intervention. And when a rare franchise becomes available, bidding wars erupt instantly. The Broncos sale attracted over a dozen serious groups, which means buying a team requires three things: relationships, liquidity, patience. Second option, buy a minority stake. Private equity firms have increasingly entered sports this way. You get prestige, access, partial economic upside, but almost no operational control. And then there's the third path, the one that created some of the most valuable teams in history. Get in before the league becomes dominant. In 1960, Lamar Hunt wanted an NFL franchise. The NFL refused to expand. So Hunt created an entirely new league instead, the American Football League. A decade later, the AFL merged with the NFL, and the Kansas City Chiefs, a team Hunt effectively started from scratch, are now worth billions. That's one of the biggest patterns in sports ownership. The greatest returns usually happen before the asset becomes obviously valuable. Now let's say you own a mid-market NFL franchise. The season hasn't even started yet. You're already staring at enormous fixed costs. The NFL salary cap now exceeds $250 million. That's before coaching staffs, scouting departments, analysts, medical teams, facilities, travel, and front office operations. Top NFL coaches can earn $10 to $20 million annually. Entire coaching staffs can cost tens of millions by themselves. Then, stadium operations, security, technology, maintenance. Before selling a single ticket, your annual costs can easily approach $400 million. And here's the strange part. In many markets, local team revenue alone doesn't fully justify those numbers, which raises the obvious question. How does anybody make money doing this? At first glance, sports teams make money the obvious way. Tickets, merchandise, sponsorships, concessions. That's real revenue. But it's not the foundation. The hidden layer is revenue sharing. The NFL negotiates national television rights collectively, not team by team. All 32 franchises negotiate together. The current media deals are worth billions annually, and that money gets divided almost equally across the league, which means every NFL team receives hundreds of millions of dollars before a single local ticket gets sold. In other words, a huge portion of your biggest expense, player payroll, is already covered automatically by national media money. But even that isn't the deepest layer. The real play is the stadium ecosystem. Because modern stadiums are no longer just sports venues. They're real estate anchors, hotels, retail, restaurants, luxury apartments, entertainment districts. Stan Kroenke spent billions building SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. But the stadium itself was only part of the project. The surrounding land development is where the real, long-term economics live. The team brings people in. The district monetizes them. The franchise is the anchor tenant. The surrounding real estate is the actual investment. There are three things most people misunderstand about sports franchises. First, people think the salary cap hurts owners. In reality, it protects them. The cap artificially limits the biggest expense in the business, player salaries. League revenues can continue growing rapidly while labor costs stay partially constrained. Second, people assume winning championships is what creates franchise value. It helps, but market size matters far more. The Cowboys became the most valuable sports team in the world with relatively little postseason success over the last few decades. Because media markets, branding, and audience scale matter more than trophies alone. And third, people think stadiums primarily benefit fans and cities, but owners often capture the most valuable economics. Public money frequently helps fund construction. Meanwhile, the franchise keeps naming rights, premium seating, revenue, sponsorship income, surrounding development, upside. The public helps build the asset. The owner captures much of the appreciation. In 1983, Donald Trump bought a team in the United States Football League. The USFL originally operated in the spring, which was smart. It avoided direct competition with the NFL. Attendance was decent. Teams were financially stable. The league was growing. Then Trump pushed for a different strategy. Move the league into the fall. Go directly against the NFL. Many owners opposed the idea. Trump believed a direct confrontation could force a merger, similar to what happened decades earlier between the AFL and NFL. Instead, the move nearly destroyed the league. Attendance collapsed, broadcast deals weakened, finances deteriorated. Then the USFL sued the NFL for monopolistic behavior. The jury technically ruled against the NFL and awarded the USFL $3 in damages. The league folded shortly afterward, and the lesson wasn't simply that the NFL was powerful. It was that sports leagues become almost impossible to disrupt once the infrastructure hardens around them. Media rights, broadcast relationships, sponsors, cities, fan loyalty, political connections. By the time a sports league becomes dominant, the moat is usually already too deep to cross. Now imagine the optimistic scenario. You buy a mid-market NFL franchise for $4 billion. Operationally, the team barely breaks even. Maybe you even lose money some years. But over a decade, franchise valuations continue climbing. Media deals grow. Scarcity increases. Sports rights become more valuable globally. 10 years later, your franchise is worth $7 or $8 billion. Even after years of mediocre operating performance, the appreciation alone creates enormous wealth. This is why so many owners tolerate weak annual profits, because they aren't optimizing for cash flow, they're optimizing for long-term asset appreciation. Now the realistic scenario. You buy near the top of the market, growth slows, audience habits change, media rights plateau, interest rates stay high, the franchise still appreciates, just not fast enough to justify the debt and purchase price. That's the real risk in sports ownership, not collapse. Overpaying for scarcity. In 1981, Donald Sterling bought the San Diego Clippers for $12.5 million. For decades, the franchise was considered one of the worst-run organizations in professional sports. Losing seasons, poor management, constant criticism. Then, in 2014, the NBA forced Sterling to sell the team after a recorded conversation triggered a massive scandal. The Clippers sold for $2 billion. Sterling turned $12.5 million into $2 billion, despite being widely viewed as one of the worst owners in professional sports history. Which tells you almost everything you need to know about this business. In professional sports, the scoreboard matters, but the cartel membership matters more.